just want to give 4 takeaways or 4 things that were revealed from David Grusch about the U.S. government and about the UFO aircrafts or UAPs, all that stuff. Because as I was hearing about this, as I watched it, and as I've heard other people talk about it, man, it's crazy. It's crazy. And so here is the first thing that David Grusch admitted, revealed when he was being pressed and asked questions by the U.S. Congress. Here's takeaway number 1 from it. The U.S. government and certain military contracts have been recovering UFO or UAP craft along with its non-human entities, flying it for decades, and they've been trying to reverse engineer the craft for decades. Like, this is not a movie. So many people have reported this, said this, seen these things. I mean, they've been saying this for years, and finally it's like this guy has come forward and basically saying what everyone already knew, but now we got some strong validity to these statements that the U.S. government and certain military contracts, they've been recovering UFO or UAP craft for decades, okay? Trying to reverse engineer it for decades, but they've recovered it along with its non-human entities that were flying it. So they've captured, I forget the actual term that they use, biologics or some kind of scientific term for non-human physical entities that were aboard those aircraft. And it's been happening for decades. So you think back to Roswell and the whole conspiracy thing about what happened there, kind of lends credence to it, that they've been recovering craft with physical entities in the craft flying it that are non-human. What? It just feels like a movie, but it's not. So that's the first thing. Crazy. Then the second takeaway that was revealed is segments of the U.S. government and certain military contractors have been in contact with at least one alien species. And this was like a separate part to the first takeaway, not talking about the non-human entities that were recovered in the craft that have crashed or that they've recovered over the last decades. It's talking about a separate alien species that they've been in contact with. At least one. According to this guy, the U.S. government and certain military contractors, humans, people, have been in contact with at least one alien species. That is, what? Now, I know those of you watching this right now, if you're Christian especially, you'd be like, oh, it's demons. We'll get into that in a little bit. And those of you who have watched my previous podcast, I think it's episode 11 of the podcast, I do a whole, I basically talk about why I don't think aliens are demons. So if I don't believe aliens are demons, so then what the heck are these things? Who has the government been talking to? Who has these military contractors been talking to? Crazy. The third thing, people on the inside of these UFO, UAP groups, okay, have been killed either by trying to fly the craft that's crashed. You know, they're working on it, they're trying to take it apart and something blows up, or they're trying to fly it around and they lose control and they crash. Either been killed by that, they've been killed by private contractors and or U.S. military government or intelligence community. They've been killed by them because maybe they discovered something that they shouldn't have discovered, trying to keep them silent. All of those things were hinted at. They've been killed by the aliens themselves. So people, I guess U.S. citizens in these UFO, UAP groups have been killed, either working on the craft, trying to reverse engineer it, fly it, whatever, or they've been murdered by military government contractors, the U.S. government or military, or by the aliens themselves. This is what this guy said. Oh, this is what this guy this is what Grusch very strongly alluded to. Like, this literally is stuff in a movie, but it's real life. And this guy's living it out. That's nuts, man. And then fourth takeaway from this was David Grusch and his family. They've been threatened and persecuted by segments of the U.S. government and all that entails: military, independent contractors, the intelligence community, all of that. They've been persecuted, and his life and his family's lives have been threatened. And so basically he had two choices. He's like, I either let them come at me, silence me themselves, or I guess they've created some kind of system where whistleblowers can come forward and then receive protection. And so this is what he elected to do: come forward, go public with it all, to try to save himself and his family. And so, again, these are just four main takeaways that I felt like were enough to talk about in this episode. But there's so much more, so many more specific stories and examples from the pilots of stuff that they've seen flying the aircraft, coming into contact with these UAPs and all this crazy stuff. But you got murder happening, you got reverse engineering, you got the U.S. in contact with at least one alien species. You got them finding the crashed aircraft and then finding non-human entities inside. And this has been happening for decades.